Hello everyone and welcome back to FilmBook Review, an official YouTube channel of FilmBook. Featured in Google News, IMDb's news desk, and a member of the Critics' Choice Association, FilmBook is an entertainment industry news website that reports on the film and television show industries in the United States and across the world. Today on FilmBook Review, I will be reviewing the film Witch Hunt, a movie that screened at the 2021 South by Southwest Film Festival. Witch Hunt is directed by Ella Callahan, written by Ella Callahan, and stars Gideon Adlon, Elizabeth Mitchell, Abigail Cowan, Christian Camargo, and Echo Campbell. This is a Witch Hunt movie review and there will be spoilers. If you like our movie reviews, please like this Witch Hunt film review as that helps us out with YouTube's algorithm, and consider subscribing. Once subscribed, click the bell notification box and you're all set. Please also consider becoming one of our patrons on Patreon at patreon.com/filmbook. In a society where witch hunt has become a phrase of the reactionaries, particularly by powerful men to decry the substantial allegations of abuse lobbied against them, Ella Callahan's new film Witch Hunt appropriately reclaims its true definition, literally and figuratively. Her mix of politics with low fantasy creates a metaphor for oppression in modern-day America, but it also muddies its own waters with less than desirable consequences. In this version of America, witchcraft is a very real supernatural force, and the citizenry at large downright despises it. In fact, the hatred of witchcraft is so extreme that an amendment to the US Constitution was ratified to ban it outright, as well as the women themselves who possess its power, the gene as it's referred to, which doesn't appear to manifest in men at all. A weaponized arm of law enforcement, known as the BWI, the Bureau of Witchcraft Investigation, rounds up convicted witches for capital punishment by way of burning at the stake, and subjects its female populace to frequent invasive witchcraft tests. Think the witch weight test from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but much more sinister. There exists an underground railroad of sorts that traffics witches out of the country, but the far reach of the BWI makes even this network's existence a fraught one at best. In the American Southwest, close to the Mexico border, high schooler Claire, Gideon Adlon, is just trying to be a normal teenager and invite her friends over to hang out, but her mom, Elizabeth Mitchell, has made that difficult by converting their farmhouse to a stop on the witch refugee network. This fills Claire with anti-witch scorn and angst beyond the normal levels of teen moodiness, until a pair of red-headed sisters, the teenage Fiona and the young Shay, Abigail Cowan and Echo Campbell respectively, show up as a stop on their way to Mexico. Due to a snag in the network's connections, these sisters end up staying longer than expected, forcing Claire into closer proximity with her guests than she's used to. Over time, Claire starts to open up and reevaluate her own prejudices, particularly with Fiona, as they both share a mutual feeling of adolescent ostracization. But the closer Claire gets with Fiona and Shay, the more frequently strange occurrences begin happening around their house, and the harder it becomes for the family to hide their secret from suspicious townspeople, including a bloodthirsty BWI official, Christian Camargo, gunning for a full-on purge. From major allegories of systemic sexism and anti-immigrant rhetoric akin to The Handmaid's Tale, to minor details like the genetics of magic and the witch-only portals that recall cultural giants like Harry Potter, Callahan works with familiar tropes to help flesh out her world. But, similar to both of those properties, Callahan's centering of white narratives ends up undercutting its own societal persecution metaphors. Yes, if we take witchcraft as femininity as its direct metaphorical correlation, then Witch Hunt's depiction of America's inherent misogyny is quite potent. When Claire must undergo an in-school test wherein her beauty marks are measured to make sure they're not water-like, it's a shockingly evident representation of the ways in which women and AFAB people have their entire lives scrutinized and even dehumanized by all of society, merely for existing in it. But the filmmakers let their lack of symbolic understanding seep through, as it's mostly white women who are granted this particular status of the fantastical feminine. In the vein of Anna Cottl's critique of The Handmaid's Tale as a white feminist dystopia, in which she points out how in her novel Atwood usurps the misogynistic violence forced upon black women throughout history and applies it to white women instead, all the while effectively writing people of color out of the narrative, it's hard to view Witch Hunt without thinking of its co-option of the non-white experience. The particular inclusion of black people as the primary transporters of these witches across this underground railroad-like network might have been set up with subversive intentions, but the narrative is not disconnected from the real world enough to warrant such disregard of historical weight in service of a fantastical reality. To make matters worse, the whole BWI as ICE allegory rings even more tone-deaf. It ignores the very real implications of racism and xenophobia at home, as well as imperialist violence perpetrated by the US abroad that spurs its domestic issues on and retools the trauma to show that, yes, white women in America have it hard too. But another mark in the tally of dystopian tales that show white people as the oppressed and possibly even worse, the othering of fantastical beings, which is in this case to hammer home the very concept of racism/xenophobia, which only services Western chauvinism through white tears and manipulative sympathy. It'd be easier to overlook these issues if Callahan's direction was a bit more striking, since that would also hide its assumed budgetary shortcomings. CGI fire and smoke is very hit or miss, and in this case, it was the latter. But she only offers momentary peeks into such a vision, which in turn undercuts the premise's latent horror. A more complex Bildungsroman for Claire and a more textured exploration of female friendship also existed here, but unfortunately, they remain trapped behind the film's hollowed-out walls. Witch Hunt has the indie gumption of loaded genre fare, but it severely stumbles on its own elaboration. It doesn't necessarily need to be burned at the stake, but it should definitely be left alone. And that brings us to the conclusion of this Witch Hunt movie review. I would love to hear your thoughts on it below in the comment section. If you liked what you heard during this review, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for viewing, and you can watch one of these reviews next.